Section 36 of Library of the World's Best Literature, Ancient and Modern, Volume 2. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Todd Ulbrich. Library of the World's Best Literature, Ancient and Modern, Volume 2, Section 36. Excerpts from Orlando Furioso by Ludovico Ariosto. The Friendship of Medoro and Cloridane. From Orlando Furioso, Cantos 18 and 19. Two Moors among the Paynim army were, from stock obscure in Ptolomita grown, of whom the story and example rare of constant love is worthy to be known. Medore and Cloridane were named the pair, who whether fortune pleased to smile or frown, served Dardinello with fidelity, and late with him to France had crossed the sea. Of nimble frame and strong was Cloridane, throughout his life a follower of the chase. A cheek of white suffused with crimson grain, Medoro had in youth a pleasing grace. Nor bound on that emprise mid all the train, was there a fairer or more jocund face. Crisp hair he had of gold and jet-black eyes, and seemed an angel lighted from the skies. These two were posted on a rampart's height, with more to guard the encampment from surprise, when mid the equal intervals at night, Medoro gazed on heaven with sleepy eyes. In all his talk the stripling, woeful wight, here cannot choose but of his lord devise the royal Dardinel, and evermore him left unhonoured on the field deplore. Then turning to his mate, cries, Cloridane, I cannot tell thee what a cause of woe it is to me my lord upon the plain should lie, unworthy food for wolf or crow. Thinking how still to me he was humane, meseems if in his honour I forego this life of mine, for favours so immense I shall but make a feeble recompense. That he may not lack sepulture, will I go forth and seek him out among the slain, and haply God may will that none shall spy where Charles's camp lies hushed. Do thou remain, that if my death be written in the sky, thou mayst the deed be able to explain, so that if fortune foils so far a feat, the world through fame my loving heart may weet. Amazed was Cloridane a child should show such heart, such love, and such fair loyalty, and fain would make the youth his thought forego, whom he held passing dear, but fruitlessly would move his steadfast purpose, for such woe will neither comforted nor altered be. Medoro is disposed to meet his doom, or to enclose his master in the tomb. Seeing that naught would bend him, naught would move, I too will go, was Cloridane's reply, in such a glorious act myself will prove, as well such famous death I covet I. What other thing is left me here above, deprived of thee, Medoro mine? To die with thee in arms is better on the plain, than afterwards of grief shouldst thou be slain. And thus resolved, disposing in their place their guard's relief, depart the youthful pair, leave fosse and palisade, and in small space are among ours who watch with little care, who, for they little fear the Paynim race, slumber with fires extinguished everywhere. Mid carriages and arms they lie supine, up to the eyes immersed in sleep and wine. A moment Cloridano stopped and cried, not to be lost are opportunities. This troop by whom my master's blood was shed, Medoro ought not I to sacrifice? Do thou, lest any one this way be led, watch everywhere about with ears and eyes, for a wide array amid the hostile horde I offer here to make thee with my sword. So said he, and his talk cut quickly short, coming where learned Alpheus slumbered nigh, who had the year before sought Charles's court in medicine, magic, and astrology well versed, but now in art found small support, or rather found that it was all a lie. He had foreseen that he his long-drawn life should finish on the bosom of his wife. And now the Saracen with wary view had pierced his weazen with the pointed sword. For others he near the diviner slew, nor gave the wretches time to say a word. Sir Turpin in his story tells not who, and time has of their names effaced record. Paladon of Moncalier next he speeds, one who securely sleeps between two steeds. Rearing the insidious blade, the pair are near the place where round King Charles's pavilion are tented warlike paladin and peer, guarding the side that each is camped upon, when in good time the Paynims backward steer, and sheathe their swords, the impious slaughter done. Deeming impossible in such a number, but they must light on one who does not slumber, and though they might escape well charged with prey, to save themselves they think sufficient gain. Thither by what he deems the safest way, Medoro following him, went Cloridane, where in the field mid bow and falchion lay, and shield and spear in pool of purple stain. Wealthy and poor, the king and vassals course, and overthrown the rider and his horse. The silvery splendor glistened yet more clear, there where renowned Almonte's son lay dead. Faithful Medoro mourned his master dear, who well agonized the quartering white and red, with visage bathed in many a bitter tear. For he a reel from either eyelid shed, and piteous act and moan that must have whisked the winds his melancholy plaint to list. But with a voice suppressed, not that he aught regards if any one the noise should hear, because he of his life takes any thought, of which loath burden he would fain be clear. But lest his being heard should bring to naught the pious purpose which has brought him here, the youths the king upon their shoulders stowed, and so between themselves divide the load. Hurrying their steps they hastened as they might, under the cherished burden they conveyed, and now approaching was the Lord of Light, to sweep from heaven the stars, from earth the shade, when good Zerbino, whose valiant sprite was ne'er in time of need by sleep downweighed, from chasing Moors all night his homeward way, was taking to the camp at dawn of day. He has with him some horsemen in his train, that from afar the two companions spy. Expecting thus some spoil or prize to gain, they every one toward that quarter hie. Brother, behooves us, cried young Cloridane, to cast away the load we bear and fly. For 'twere a foolish thought, might well be said, to lose 2 living men to save 1 dead. And dropped the burden, weening his Medoro had done the same by it upon his side. But that poor boy, who loved his master more, his shoulders to the weight alone applied, Cloridane hurrying with all haste before, deeming him close behind him or beside. Who did he know his danger him to save, 1,000 deaths instead of 1 would brave. The closest path amid the forest grey to save himself pursued the youth forlorn, but all his schemes were marred by the delay of that sore weight upon his shoulders borne. The place he knew not, and mistook the way, and hid himself again in sheltering thorn. Secure and distant was his mate, that through the greenwood shade with lighter shoulders flew. So far was Cloridane advanced before, he heard the boy no longer in the wind. But when he marked the absence of Medoro, it seemed as if his heart was left behind. Ah, how was I so negligent, the Moor exclaimed, so far beside myself and blind, that I, Medoro, should without thee fare, nor know when I deserted thee or where. So saying, in the wood he disappears, plunging into the maze with hurried pace, and thither whence he lately issued steers, and desperate of death returns in trace. Cries and the tread of steeds this while he hears, and word and threat of foemen as in chase. Lastly Medoro by his voice is known, disarmed on foot mid many horse alone. 100 horsemen who the youth surround, Zerbino leads and bids his followers seize. The stripling like a top the boy turns round, and keeps him as he can among the trees. Behind oak, elm, beech, ash he takes his ground, nor from the cherished load his shoulders frees. Wearied at length the burden he bestowed upon the grass, and stalked about his load, as in her rocky cavern the she-bear, with whom close warfare Alpine's hunters wage, uncertain hangs about her shaggy care, and growls in mingled sound of love and rage, to unsheath her claws and blood her tushes bare. Would natural hate and wrath the beast engage, love softens her, and bids from strife retire, and for her offspring watch amid her ire. Cloridane, who to aid him knows not how, and with Medoro willingly would die, but who would not for his death this being forego, until more foes than should one lifeless lie. Ambushed, his sharpest arrow to his bow fits, and directs it with so true an eye, the feathered weapon bores a Scotchman's brain, and lays the warrior dead upon the plain. Together all the others of the band turn thither whence was shot the murderous reed. Meanwhile he launched another from his stand, that a new foe might by the weapon bleed. Whom while he made of this and that demand, and loudly questioned who had done the deed, the arrow reached, transfixed the wretch's throat, and cut his question short in middle note. Zerbino, captain of those horse, no more can at the piteous sight his wrath refrain. In furious heat he springs upon Medore, exclaiming, "Thou of this shalt bear the pain." One hand he in his locks of golden ore enwreaths, and drags him to himself amain. But as his eyes that beauteous face survey, takes pity on the boy, and does not slay. To him the stripling turns with suppliant cry, and by thy God, Sir Knight, exclaims, I pray, be not so passing cruel, nor deny that I in earth my honoured king may lay. No other grace I supplicate, nor I this for the love of life, believe me, say. So much no longer space of life I crave, as may suffice to give my lord a grave. And if you needs must feed the beast and bird, like Theban Creon, let their worst be done upon these limbs, so that by me interred in earth be those of good Almonte's son. Medoro thus his suit with grace preferred, and words to move a mountain, and so won upon Zerbino's mood to kindness turned, with love and pity he all over burned. This while a churlish horseman of the band, who little deference for his lord confessed, his lance uplifting, wounded overhand the unhappy suppliant in his dainty breast. Zerbino, who the cruel action scanned, was deeply stirred, the rather that oppressed, and livid with the blow the churl had sped, Medoro fell as he was wholly dead. The Scots pursue their chief, who pricks before, through the deep wood, inspired by high disdain. When he has left the one and the other more, this dead, that scarce alive, upon the plain. There for a mighty space lay young Medore, sprouting his life blood from so large a vein. He would have perished, but that thither made a stranger as it chanced to lend him aid. End of Canto 18. The Saving of Medoro, from Orlando Furioso, Canto 19. By chance arrived a damsel at the place, who was, though mean and rustic was her wear, of royal presence and of beauteous face, and lofty manners sagely debonair. Her have I left unsung so long a space, that you will hardly recognize the fair Angelica, in her, if known not, scan the lofty daughter of Cathay's great Khan. Angelica, when she had won again the ring Brunello had from her conveyed, so waxed in stubborn pride and hot disdain, she seemed to scorn this ample world, and strayed alone, and held as cheap each living swain, although amid the best by fame arrayed. Nor brooked she to remember a gallant in Count Orlando or King Sacripant, and above every other deed repented that good Ronaldo she had loved of yore, and that to look so low she had consented, as by such choice dishonoured grieved her sore. Love, hearing this, such arrogance resented, and would the damsel's pride endure no more. Where young Medoro lay he took his stand, and waited her with bow and shaft in hand. When fair Angelica the stripling spies, nigh hurt to death in that disastrous fray, who for his king that there unsheltered lies, More sad than for his own misfortune lay, she feels new pity in her bosom rise, which makes its entry into unwonted way. Touched was her naughty heart, once hard and cursed, and more when he his piteous tale rehearsed, and calling back to memory her art, for she in Ind had learned chirurgy, since it appears such studies in that part worthy of praise and fame are held to be, and as an heirloom sires to sons impart with little aid of books the mystery. Disposed herself to work with simple's juice, till she in him should healthier life produce, and recollects an herb had caught her sight in passing thither on a pleasant plain. What whether dittany or pansy hight, I know not, fraught with virtue to restrain the crimson blood forth welling, and of might to sheathe each perilous and piercing pain. She found it near, and having pulled the weed, returned to seek Medoro on the mead. Returning she upon a swain did light, who was on horseback passing through the wood. Strayed from the lowing herd the rustic wight, a heifer missing for 2 days pursued. Him she with her conducted, where the might of the faint youth was ebbing with his blood, which had the ground about so deeply dyed, life was nigh wasted with the gushing tide. Angelica alights upon the ground, and he, her rustic comrade, at her best. She hastened 'twixt 2 stones the herb to pound, then took it, and the healing juice expressed. With this did she foment the stripling's wound, and even to his lips his waist and breast. And with such virtue was the salve endued, it stanched his lifeblood, and his strength renewed, and into him infused such force again, that he could mount the horse the swain conveyed. But good Medoro would not leave the plain, till he in earth had seen his master laid. He with the monarch buried Cloridane, and after followed whither pleased the maid, who was to stay with him, by pity led, beneath the courteous shepherd's humble shed. Nor would the damsel quit the lowly pile, so she esteemed the youth till he was sound. Such pity first she felt, when him erewhile she saw outstretched and bleeding on the ground. Touched by his mien and manners next, a file she felt corrode her heart with secret wound. She felt corrode her heart, and with desire, by little and by little warmed took fire. The shepherd dwelt between 2 mountains hoar, in goodly cabin in the greenwood shade, with wife and children in short time before, the brand new shed had builded in the glade. Here of his grisly wound the youthful Moor was briefly healed by the Catayan maid, but who in briefer space a sorer smart than young Medoro's suffered at her heart. Note: she pines for love of him, and at length makes her love known. They solemnize their marriage, and remain a month there with great happiness. End note. Amid such pleasures, where with tree or grove ran stream or bubbling fountains waved its spin, on bark or rock if yielding where the stone, the knife was straight at work or ready pin, and there without in 1,000 places lone, and in as many places graved within, Medoro and Angelica were traced, in divers ciphers quaintly interlaced. When she believed they had prolonged their stay more than enow, the damsel made design in India to revisit her Cathay, and with its crown Medoro's head entwine, she had upon her wrist an armlet gay, with costly gems in witness and in sign of love to her by Count Orlando born, and which the damsel for long time had worn. No love which to the paladin she bears, but that it costly is, and wrought with care. This to Angelica so much endears, that never more esteemed was matter rare. This she suffered in the Isle of Tears, I know not by what privilege to wear, when, naked to the whale exposed for food, by that inhospitable race and rude, she not possessing wherewithal to pay the kindly couple's hospitality, served by them in their cabin from the day she there was lodged with such fidelity, unfastened from her arm the bracelet gay, and bade them keep it for her memory. Departing hence, the lovers climb the side of hills which fertile France from Spain divide. End of Canto 19. The Madness of Orlando, from Orlando Furioso, Canto 23. The course in pathless woods, which without rein the Tartar's charger had pursued astray, made Roland for 2 days with fruitless pain follow him without tidings of his way. Orlando reached a rill of crystal vein, on either bank of which a meadow lay, which, stained with native hues and rich, he sees, and dotted o'er with fair and many trees. The midday fervour made the shelter sweet to hardy herd as well as naked swain, so that Orlando well beneath the heat some deal might wince oppressed with plate and chain. He entered for repose the cool retreat, and found it the abode of grief and pain, and place of sojourn more accursed and fell on that unhappy day than tongue can tell. Turning him round, he there on many a tree beheld engraved upon the woody shore what as the writing of his deity he knew as soon as he had marked the lore. This was a place of those described by me, whither oft times attended by Medore, from the near shepherd's cot had wont to stray the beauteous lady, sovereign of Cathay. In 100 knots amid these green abodes, in 100 parts their ciphered names are dight, whose many letters are so many goads, which love has in his bleeding heart corpite. He would discredit in 1,000 modes that which he credits in his own despite, and would perforce persuade himself that rhymed other Angelica than his had signed. And yet I know these characters, he cried, of which I have so many read and seen. By her may this Medoro be belied, and me she figured in the name may mean. Feeding on such like fantasies, beside the real truth did sad Orlando lean upon the empty hope, though ill contended, which he by self-illusions had fomented, but stirred and I rekindled it, the more that he to quench the ill suspicion wrought. Like the incautious bird, by fowler's lore, hampered in net or lime, which in the thought to free its tangled pinions and to soar, by struggling is but more securely caught. Orlando passes thither, where a mountain o'erhangs in guise of arch the crystal fountain. Here from his horse the souring county lit, and at the entrance of the grot surveyed a cloud of words which seemed but newly writ, and which the young Medoro's hand had made. On the great pleasure he had known in it, this sentence he in verses had arrayed, which to his tongue I deem might make pretence to polished phrase, and such in ours the sense. Gay plants, green herbage, rill of limpid vein, and grateful with cool shade, thou gloomy cave, where oft by many wooed with fruitless pain, beauteous Angelica, the child of grave King Galafron, within my arms has lain. For the convenient harbourage you gave, I, poor Medoro, can but in my lays as recompense for ever sing your praise, and any loving lord devoutly pray, damsel and cavalier, and every one whom choice or fortune hither shall convey, stranger or native to this crystal run, shade, caverned rock, and grass, and plants to say, benignant be to you the fostering sun, and moon, and may the choir of nymphs provide, that never swain his flock may hither guide. In Arabic was writ the blessing said, known to Orlando like the Latin tongue, who versed in many languages, best read was in this speech, which oftentimes from wrong and injury and shame had saved his head. What time he roved the Saracens among, but let him boast not of its former boot, or balanced by the present bitter fruit. 3 times, and 4 and 6 the lines impressed upon the stone that wretch perused, in vain seeking other sense than was expressed, and ever saw the thing more clear and plain, and all the while within his troubled breast he felt an icy hand his heart core strain, with mind and eyes close fastened on the block. At length he stood, not differing from the rock, then well nigh lost all feeling, so a prey wholly was he to that o'ermastering woe. This is a pang, believe the experienced say, of him who speaks, which does all griefs outgo. His pride had from his forehead passed away, his chin had fallen upon his breast below, nor found he so grief-barred each natural vent,
moisture for tears or utterance for lament. Stifled within the impetuous sorrow stays, which would too quickly issue, so to abide. Water is seen imprisoned in the vase, whose neck is narrow and whose swell is wide. What time when one turns up the inverted base toward the mouth, so hastes the hurrying tide, and in the strait encounters such a stop, it scarcely works a passage drop by drop. He somewhat to himself returned, and thought how possibly the thing might be untrue, that someone, so he hoped, desired, and sought to think his lady would with shame pursue, or with such weight of jealousy had wrought to whelm his reason as should him undo, and that he, whosoe'er the thing had planned, had counterfeited passing well her hand. With such vain hope he sought himself to cheat, and manned some deal his spirits, and awoke. Then pressed the faithful Brigliadoro's seat, as on the sun's retreat his sister broke. Not far the warrior had pursued his beat, ere eddying from a roof he saw the smoke, heard noise of dog and kine, a farm espied, and thitherward in quest of lodging hied. Languid he lit, and left his Brigliador to a discreet attendant. One undressed his limbs, one doffed the golden spurs he wore, one bore off to clean his iron vest. This was the homestead where the young Medore lay wounded, and was here supremely blessed. Orlando here with other food unfed, having supped full of sorrow, sought his bed. Little availed the Count his self-deceit, for there was one who spake of it unsought, the shepherd swain, who, to allay the heat with which he saw his guest so troubled, thought the tale which he was wonted to repeat, of the two lovers to each listener taught, a history which many loved to hear. He now without reserve gan tell the peer, how at Angelica's persuasive prayer he to his farm had carried young Medore, grievously wounded with an arrow, where in little space she healed the angry sore. But while she exercised this pious care, love in her heart the lady wounded more, and kindled from small spark so fierce a fire, she burnt all over, restless with desire. Nor thinking she of mightiest king was born, who ruled in the east, nor of her heritage, forced by too puissant love, had thought no scorn, to be the consort of a poor foot-page. His story done, to them in proof was born the gem, which in reward for harbourage to her extended in that kind abode Angelica at parting had bestowed. In him forthwith such deadly hatred breed, that bed, that house, that swain he will not stay, till the morn break or till the dawn succeed, whose twilight goes before approaching day. In haste Orlando takes his arms and steed, and to the deepest greenwood wends his way, and when assured that he is there alone, gives utterance to his grief, and shriek and groan. Never from tears, never from sorrowing he paused, nor found he peace by night or day. He fled from town and forest harbouring, and in the open air on hard earth lay. He marvelled at himself how such a spring of water from his eyes could stream away, and breath was for so many sobs supplied, and thus oft times amid his mourning cried, I am not what I seem to sight. What Roland was is dead and underground, slain by that most ungrateful lady's spite, whose faithlessness inflicted such a wound. Divided from the flesh, I am his sprite, which in this hell tormented walks its round, to be but in its shadow left above, a warning to all such as trust in love. All night about the forest roved the Count, and at the break of daily light was brought by his unhappy fortune to the font, where his inscription young Medoro wrought. To see his wrongs inscribed upon that mount inflamed his fury so, in him was naught but turned to hatred, frenzy, rage, and spite, nor paused he more, but bared his falchion bright, cleft through the writing in the solid block, into the sky in tiny fragments sped. Woe worth each sapling and that caverned rock, where Medore and Angelica were read, so scathed that they to shepherd or to flock thenceforth shall never furnish shade or bed. And that sweet fountain late so clear and pure, from such tempestuous wrath was ill secure. So fierce his rage, so fierce his fury grew, that all obscured remained the warrior sprite, nor for forgetfulness his sword he drew, or wondrous deeds, I trow, had wrought the knight. But neither this, nor bill, nor axe to hew, was needed by Orlando's peerless might. He of his prowess gave high proofs and full, who a tall pine uprooted at a pull. He many others with as little let as fennel, walwort stem, or dill uptore, and ilex, knotted oak, and fir upset, and beech and mountain ash and elm tree hoar. He did what fowler ere he spreads his net does, to prepare the champaign for his lore, by stubble, rush, and nettle stalk, and broke like these old sturdy trees and stem of oak. The shepherd swains who hear the tumult nigh, leaving their flocks beneath the greenwood tree, some here, some there, across the forest high, and hurry thither all the cause to see. But I have reached such point my history, if I o'erpass this bound may irksome be, and I my story will delay to end, rather than by my tediousness offend. End of section 36. Recording by Todd Albrecht.